and welcome to Bon Appetit Geek, a fun twist on a cooking show where three geeky friends come together to bring our favorite fandoms to life by whipping up tasty dishes in our home kitchen based on and inspired by our favorite games, shows, movies, and more. I'm Rach.
I'm Nora.
I'm Jeremy.
And we are three geeks who play with our food. Welcome to our very first episode of Bon Appetit Geek. We are so excited to bring you this show. So we are kicking off with our first episode, and we thought what better way to start than with one of our very first fandoms. We are taking it all the way back to the 1980s to present with Super Mario, a game that has over 35 years of history, tons of spin-offs, Yoshi, Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, all sorts of different things, and a game that I personally remember playing when I was 5 years old on the NES with my mom after school.
Are you talking about Mario's Missing? Because that was on Super.
I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about old school Super Mario Brothers.
Game,
but that's actually one of the few I didn't play. I got really obsessed with Super Mario Brothers 3 and with the Super Nintendo version of Mario Kart. Both of those are my games.
I think my favorite Mario was Kart, at least, was Double Dash. My favorite Mario was probably 64 or Galaxy. I think they both handled the 3D platforming better than anyone before or since.
64 was tough for me. That was a tough time trying to make that move to 3D. I just spent a lot of time looking everywhere I wasn't supposed to, but I got the hang of it eventually.
Yeah, mine was just the old school original. I played it with my grandpa, Papu. We played it every day. That and Duck Hunt. We called the little hotline to get some cheat codes. Nice. We took it way before the internet.
I remember I actually made it into an issue of Nintendo Power once with one of the best times for Koopa Beach on the original Mario Kart.
Nice.
I have nothing that impressive. I just played a lot and used my Game Genie to cheat a lot. So yeah.
I probably have the record for the most crashes in Mario Kart. I was really good at that.
Right.
Yeah.
So one great thing about Mario is it makes perfect sense for an Italian plumber to go to another place and never touch a plunger or really do anything Italian. So that's what we decided to do, was take a plunger and cook it. Actually, no, we are making...
No, there are no cooked plungers on this show. That is not part of this show, ever.
We're actually cooking Italian food and going for Italian drinks.
Yeah, that we are sticking with that theme, and we've made a couple different courses to our meal and a couple of different drinks. Nora, you started us off with our salad course.
Yes, our appetizer was Yoshi's burrata salad, and I hope it turns out. I hope it looks like Yoshi. I love me some burrata, so I don't know how we can go wrong. Cheese and bread.
Yeah, it's a super cute theme. We're going for little Yoshi eggs. I just love it. Sticking on that same theme of trying to make our food look like something from the game, for our main, I chose Super Mushroom Meatloaves. These are based on the super mushrooms in the game, but they don't actually contain any mushrooms in the meatloaf. So it's misleading in that way. But what we're going for is mini meatloaves that look like those little mushrooms from the game. I actually had the idea to try to make them be one-up mushrooms and use pesto, but it was kind of death by pesto.
No.
So I guess they ended up being more like the poison mushrooms. So super mushrooms it was.
Yeah, and to go along with all these things we were making, I went with two drinks. I went with a cocktail, and what I was really excited to come out with was a mocktail. So this is a huge thing in the drinks industry right now, is low or no alcohol. And a lot of bars are embracing this, and I thought we should probably embrace this on the show as well, because you don't always want to be out of it when you're hanging with friends or trying to discuss things, but you don't want to open just a random soda or other carbonated drink that's basically flat in flavor. So I went with a Bullet Bill, which is my Mario version of a Negroni without the Campari, because I just don't like Campari. And then for the mocktail, I went with Miss Daisy is Driving, based on the Mario Kart reference. I went for a little bit of yellow and orange color scheme with it, like her dress, and then red on top via a cherry.
I'm really excited for that one. I always choose Daisy on Mario Kart, so that sounds like it's going to be fantastic. So for our dessert, we went with another princess. We went with Princess Peach Cakes. This one deviates from the theme of making the food item look like a game piece, and more building into Princess Peach has a fruit in her name, and we're going to go with that. So we're doing a peaches and cream cake with a filling and a nice frosting and a little crown on top. I think if it all turns out well, it should be fantastic.
Maybe we should start with that one. Dessert first.
I'm always down for dessert first.
Works for me.
All right, well let's get cooking.
Yeah,
Let's start playing with our food.
Yes.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the very first recipe for Bon Appetit Geek. And we are starting it off with Yoshi's Burrata Salad. First, let's go over the ingredients you're going to need. You're going to need some olive oil. You're going to need a pint of cherry tomatoes. These are cut in half. Any bread that you liked for dipping. This is a sourdough loaf. Some balsamic vinegar, pesto, a few basil leaves, not too many, and some salt. And burrata. Burrata is just mozzarella with a gooey center. It's delicious. And we also are going to need some fresh garlic. Now the recipe calls for 1 large bulb of garlic. My store didn't have that, so we have 3 tiny ones, but it'll be fine. We're going to roast the garlic. So what you do is you peel off just the very outer layer. You want to be able to keep it held together, so don't peel it all the way. And just cut the very tops off. So you're looking at the little bulbs on the inside, the little cloves. You're going to put that in a little bed of aluminum foil to roast. And you're going to drizzle it with olive oil and some salt. You don't need to measure it, just how much you like. And then we're going to just wrap that up like a yummy garlic present. And that's ready for the oven. We're also going to roast our tomatoes on the same pan. These are a pint of the half cherry tomatoes. And again, we're just going to put some olive oil and a good pinch of salt. Now these are going to go in the oven at 400 degrees. They're going to roast. The garlic roast for about 40 minutes. The tomatoes need about 25 to 30, and then we'll come back and finish it up. We have our tomatoes. They are nice and roasted. Our garlic. Here's how it should look. It should be all totally brown on the top, and we're going to see if it works, because you should be able to just squeeze this into the bowl. Oh yeah, that's what you want. You just want to squeeze all that gooiness out. All right, and then you're just going to mush it into a paste. And then when it's in a mushy paste, we're just going to butter our bread with it. All right. I've already done a couple, and I've just got this serving tray, and I'm going to just line the outer edges with the bread. Depending on how much garlic you want, you can put as little as much as you want. I like a lot of garlic. I'm just really going to pile it on. And once we have all the bread, we're going to move on to our just getting everything plated, getting it set up. All right, and I just cut the sourdough into pretty, I would say, thicker slices, and then cut it in half just so it looks pretty. But it's optional. You can cut it however you want. Last piece. Scrape all that up. Okay, we're going to fill the bottom of the plate with pesto. The official measurement is 1/3 to 1/2 cup, but it really depends on how much space you have, how big your burrata is. So I'm just going to kind of spoon it in and see where we go. You want to make it to a circle. This is going to be the bed that the cheese sits on. And of course, this is store-bought pesto. Feel free to make your own, whatever you want to do. I think I'm going to put 1 more spoonful, kind of spread it out to make it pretty. And there we go. We're going to lay the burrata on top. This comes with 4. With the size of our plate, I think I'm only going to do 2 today, which means we'll get to do another one another day. And you just lay them on the pesto. And that would be the Yoshi eggs. We're going to surround the pesto with your tomatoes. You're just going to spoon those on. And now it's all about, presentation. So if you're not really into that, you can just scoop all this into a bowl and have a good time. It's fun. I'm going to try to make it as pretty as I can. Putting it all around so everybody at the party gets some tomatoes in their bites. And I have done this before with just sliced tomatoes, not roasting them. It was also delicious. It just, again, depends on what you're in the mood for that day. Okay, now it's time. This mud makes it Yoshi's burrata salad. Is we're going to make the little Yoshi spots. This is just a basil leaf and the lid to the vanilla. That's all it is. And you're going to cut out a little circle. Just place it on there. They don't have to be perfect, little spots. They're on turtles. They're not perfect. I'm going to flatten them out though, because you don't want them to fall off. You want some of this little basil goodness when you're eating. You just put them all around, however many you want. It's up to you. Let me just show you how you do it real quick. So I just got a basil leaf, and again, the lid. I've used, for the bigger burrata balls, I have used the cap of a water bottle. That works good, but now we're going to use vanilla. We just press it down and just cut out your little circle. My basil is a little flimsy today. Usually you can get 2 circles for 1 leaf, but today it's just not cooperating. So we're only going to get 1 little circle, put him on there, and I think we just need 1 more, maybe 2. I think he is done, and at our final one, oops, he was upside down. Pat him on. Looks just like a Yoshi. Our final step, and this, if you don't like balsamic, again, you can leave it off. You can drizzle olive oil if you'd rather have that. You gotta open the bottle. Mine's like a champagne. And you're just gonna drizzle it. You're gonna want to just dunk it on your Yoshi balls. You want to try to keep it on the bread. And maybe a little bit on the tomatoes. And that's it. Yoshi's burrata salad. All right, so here's our finished product, our Yoshi's burrata salad, and now is the best part. We get to eat it.
It looks so cute. I don't want to eat it, but it smells so good. I have to.
Yes. And me and burrata, we are going to be best friends. So, bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
And you want to make sure you get all of the layers in your bite. Just scoop them up. You know what? If that doesn't work, you just use a spoon. That's what I'm getting. Because I want some burrata. What do you think?
Delicious.
Delicious.
Absolutely delicious.
All right, let's see. You got to make this. You're going to love it.
Hello, and welcome to the first cocktail section of Bon Appetit Geek. We're going to start out simple. We're going to make my take on a Negroni if you don't like Campari. So this is what I call the bullet bill. It uses champagne. We're going to use about 6 ounces. A split does that perfectly. We're going to use an unnamed bourbon for this. We're going to use a jigger to measure the bourbon. We've got a bottle of bitters here. I'm using rhubarb. It tends to give the best contrast to the flavors. This is made by Fee Brothers. I get it at my local liquor store, or you can also get it on Amazon. For final touch, I like to put in a pinch of cardamom on top of the drink. As the bubbles effervesce, it gives you a really nice scent to go along with it. So what we're going to do first is take the bourbon, pour 1.5 ounces in our jigger. Goes right to the rim. Pour in our champagne flute. Then we just top with champagne. Do a couple dashes of rhubarb bitters. A pinch of cardamom on top. And cheers.
Hey guys, so we have made an adorably delicious Yoshi salad. We've got our cocktail in hand, and now I'm going to take us through the entree portion of our Super Mario meal. We are making super mini mushroom meatloaves, and for that, like we said, we're not using mushrooms, but we are using things you would find in an Italian style meatloaf. The first step is super simple. We're basically going to take our ingredients, dump them in a bowl, and mix them together. So let's go through our ingredients. We're going to use 1 pound of ground beef. If you don't eat beef, you could substitute turkey for this. We're going to use 1/2 pound of ground Italian sausage. We really wanted to do the Italian style flavor since this is an Italian recipe, but if you can't find Italian sausage or it's a little spicy for your liking, you can use regular ground pork or really any kind of sausage. We're going to use 1/3 cup Italian style breadcrumbs. Now sometimes we have trouble finding Italian style breadcrumbs in our local grocery store. If that's the case, then you can just use regular old breadcrumbs and add a teaspoon of oregano and a 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary to give it that little Italian kick. We're going to add 1/2 of a red onion, chopped up fairly finely. You don't want giant pieces of onion in your mini meatloaf. We're going to add an egg that we have already pre-whisked. 1/3 cup of shredded Parmesan. As you can see here, I'm using the shredded kind. That's got the little tears of Parmesan. That really works better in this recipe than the powdery kind of Parmesan, but that'll do in a pinch if you can't find this stuff. We're using 3 cloves of garlic. That sounds like a lot of garlic, but this is going to make several meatloaves. And I've already minced that. You want to make sure not add the whole clove. Just mince it up. You can use a garlic mincer, or you can even use that store-bought minced garlic. We're going to do 1 tablespoon of pesto. I'm using store-bought, actually the same stuff that we used in our Yoshi salad. If you made pesto for your Yoshi salad, this is a great place to use some of that, or to get more use out of the jar you bought. We're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of smoked red pepper. I'm using a bourbon smoked red pepper. It just gives it an extra smoky, rich flavor. If you can't find that, I think that might be unique to our area. If you can't find it, a regular smoked red pepper will work. And if you can't find that either, regular old red pepper flakes will give you what you're looking for too. And then we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now we've just dumped all that together in a bowl, and we're just going to mix it up. I like to use a spatula to mix it up. You can use your hands, whatever works best for you, but you really just want to get it all nice and combined together in the bowl so you don't have a big pocket of pesto over here and a big pocket of cheese over there. So we're just going to mix it up, and then we'll be ready to stick it in our muffin tin. Okay, so when you've got your meatloaf all mixed up, where you see little bits of onions kind of evenly distributed throughout, you see little bits of spice evenly distributed throughout, we're going to put them in our pre-greased muffin tin. It's just a regular old cupcake or muffin tin. I've greased it with some cooking spray. I've got my rubber gloves on because I don't like having ground meat under my nails. That's gross. And so we're just going to pick this up, kind of form them into a little patty, kind of like you would for a burger. And then just mush them down in your muffin tin. You don't want to fill them too full, although there's not a worry that they're going to rise like a cupcake, but you don't want them puffing over the top either. Get a good amount in each one and just fill them up. Once we get them all filled, we're going to bake in a 350-degree oven for about 24 minutes. I know that's a weird measurement, but they're going to go back in once we decorate them, so that's kind of the reason that we've got a weird number there. So we're just going to fill the rest of these up, bake them, and then we'll be back. Okay, we're back. We've pulled our meatloaves out of the oven. They're looking nice and brown, but they're not quite done yet. So what we're going to do at this point is pop them out of this muffin tray and onto a baking sheet. And it's there that we will start to turn them into the super mushrooms that we all know and recognize. What we're going to do is use our marinara sauce, our goat cheese, and our basil to basically create the face of the mushroom on the meatloaves, and then we'll pop them back in the oven for a few minutes to finish up. So we're going to make our stem out of our goat cheese. That's going to be the base of the mushroom, or the stem. The eyes for the little super mushroom will be made out of basil, and we'll use our marinara sauce to make the top. We're not really using exact measurements here because it's just however much you want to play with to decorate. Sometimes you'll like what you've done and you can get it done with a little bit of goat cheese and marinara and basil, and sometimes you won't like your results and you'll want to start all over. As far as what we need to do, the first thing is just to pop these out and place them on our baking tray. Then we'll show you exactly how to turn little round meatloaves into mushrooms. Okay, so now it's time to actually decorate these meatloaves. And so the first thing we're going to do is make the stem of our mushroom, and we're going to use our goat cheese to do that. So I'm just going to chop off a couple of chunks here so we can get started on a couple of these. So we're just each going to take a chunk of goat cheese in our hands and basically form, I've got too much here, and form the bottom part of the mushroom, the little stem part, just by hand, and we're just going to press it on to the meatloaf. Make it as thick as you like. I love goat cheese, so this one is nice and thick. If you're not that big of a fan of goat cheese, you can make a little thin layer, but you just want to make sure you've got vaguely that mushroom face shape.
Excellent. What's next?
So the next thing that we're going to do then is to make the cap of the meatloaf out of our marinara sauce, and this step is super duper simple. You just take a spoonful of marinara sauce and you spoon it onto the meatloaf in kind of the shape of a mushroom cap. Use your back of your spoon just to kind of spread it around. It's okay if you drip on the pan, but you just want to make sure you get it nice and evenly distributed.
See, I cheated and I took the more mushroom shaped one on top, so mine's going to look better.
Now we're ready to put our finishing touches on. So they look kind of mushroomy, but they're not quite at that Mario point yet. So we need to do two things. We need to add some spots to the red cap, and we also need to make some little eyes. So we're going to take our goat cheese and just form it into little tiny dots to make those spots. And while Jeremy's working on that, I'm going to show you how to make the eyes out of basil. Really simple. You're just going to take a basil leaf, you're going to tear it a couple of times, or you can use a knife and cut it into a thin strip. The eyes on Mario's mushrooms are usually kind of long and narrow, so that's what we're going for here. So we'll just tear that into a nice thin strip. We'll place one eye here on this mushroom. Take another strip. We'll do this one using the knife this time. Show you just how simple it can be. Really just as simple as cutting a nice thin strip and then cutting it down to be an appropriate size for your mini meatloaf. I like to roll them just a little bit just so they're a little more uniform. Otherwise I end up with jagged edges because I'm not very good at tearing and my knife's not very sharp. We just pop those on as little super mushroom eyes. Now, just so these flavors get fully incorporated here into our meatloaves, we want to pop these back in the oven when we're finished decorating. And we're going to pop them in under the broiler. So that's just, you set that setting either low or high. It kind of depends on your oven. I run mine on high. We just want to pop them in between 5 and 10 minutes, just really until they start to kind of all come together. They get a little bit golden, but you don't want to let them go too long. This is definitely something you want to watch as they're in the oven. Just keep an eye on them, otherwise you'll end up with very, very toasty mushrooms. So we're going to finish these up, pop them in the oven, and we'll be back to taste them. we have pulled our super mushroom mini meatloaves out of the oven. We ended up leaving ours under the broiler for about 5 minutes. And as you can see, they're just barely starting to golden up, but they are ready to eat, and we think they are cute as a mushroom? I don't know.
Button mushroom.
A button mushroom. All right. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Perfect.
So good.
Hello, and welcome to the section I'm most excited about, the mocktail segment of the show. We're going to do a drink for you today that we call Miss Daisy is Driving. So what we're going to start with is some ice. I'm using a rocks glass. After that, we're going to take some mint and thyme, and we're going to muddle it. Now, there are two ways you can do this. You can either muddle it in a bowl. I'm using a muddler. You don't have to use a muddler. You can use the back of a spoon. Or, what I've seen a lot of bartenders do, so I'm going to pretend that's the right thing, is you load it in your palm like that, clap it. That'll smash all the leaves, bruise them to where they will release their oils once they're in the cocktail. So I'm definitely doing that with the mint. I will muddle the thyme just to get a little bit more flavor out of that. I'm only throwing the thyme in there to give a bit of bitterness to this drink and make it seem more like a cocktail. So we'll add the thyme. Pour in our Italian soda over those. Gonna add a cherry for Daisy's red hair. And then a twist of orange on top. And I like to shove in the peel down around the bottom so that when you turn it, you have Miss Daisy's dress. And that is our mocktail. Cheers.
Hey friends, it's time to get started on the dessert portion of our Super Mario meal. We are making mini Princess Peach cakes. They are going to be filled with a peach filling and topped with a bourbon buttercream and a miniature Princess Peach tiara. So the first step, obviously, is to make the cake. And what we're going to do is start by beating together our butter and sugars. So the first thing we need to do is add 1.5 sticks of butter to our mixer. You can use a stand mixer or a regular hand mixer and a mixing bowl.
And did you say this was unsalted?
It is unsalted butter. You always want to make sure when you're baking to use unsalted butter because you'll add salt in other sources in the recipe and you don't want your sweets to be too salty.
Yeah, you want to control the salt amount. Put that in there.
Next, we're going to add 145 grams or about 3/4 cup of light brown sugar. We like to weigh our baking measurements, but if you don't have a kitchen scale, 3/4 cup is about what you're looking for. You want to make sure you pack it in real tight.
Yeah, that's a good way to get a good measurement.
And then we're going to add 150 grams or about 3/4 cup granulated sugar. That's regular old white sugar.
Okay, now we mix. We're going to mix this for 2 to 3 minutes. Just make sure it's fully combined. And then we'll come back and add some more ingredients.
So we have mixed our butters and sugars together for about 2 or 3 minutes. Should be a nice homogeneous looking mix in there, all the same color. You don't want any big clumps of obvious butter or clumps of brown sugar. If that's the way your cake is looking, then we are ready to start adding our wet ingredients. So we're going to start with 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract.
I love vanilla. It's my favorite ingredient.
It's so good. Makes everything so homey smelling. We're going to add 3 eggs.
Do we add this all at one time? Or
All at one time.
Okay.
And 1 cup of sour cream.
Okay. And what does this do for the cake?
Sour cream is one of our sources of fat for the cake, and it will help make the cake really moist and rich and just have an overall deeper flavor.
Nice. Okay. Is that all? We're going to mix this
That
now?
is all. We're going to mix this for about 6 minutes, and we'll want to make sure occasionally to stop and scrape down the sides of our bowl.
Okay. Okay, so that is mixed. We did that for 6 minutes. We added the liquid ingredients to our butter and sugars. And we did mix it for 6 minutes to make it a light and fluffy cake, so don't skip out on that step. So what's next?
So now we are going to start adding some of our dry ingredients. And so the first thing we're going to add, we've already combined it all in one bowl, but you can add them one at a time. It doesn't really matter at this step. We're going to add 3/4 teaspoons baking soda, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And it's really important, don't over nutmeg because that will definitely take over and overpower the peachy flavor of this cake. 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom and 3/4 teaspoons of salt.
Ooh.
And we've combined them all in this bowl, and we're just going to sprinkle them on top.
Cardamom, that's really good, spicy. Just add that in.
And we'll just give it a little stir just to kind of incorporate them into the mixture. We're not beating for another 6 minutes, don't worry.
All right, and that should do it, just a few seconds.
Yeah, once you see them kind of blend in and look incorporated, we're ready to move on. We are now going to add our flour. We've got 3 cups or 390 grams, if you're weighing it out, of flour, just regular all-purpose flour.
Okay, should I add this in batches or just dump it in?
It kind of depends on the size of your mixer and the size of your bowl. If you're approaching the top already of your bowl, then you probably want to add it in batches and just let it incorporate and sink down. We've got plenty of room, so we can go ahead and add it all
Just
in.
dump it in. Great.
Okay. Now with this step, we just barely want to mix it just until the flour incorporates and disappears.
Yeah, but if you overmix it, then it becomes, turns into bread. We don't want that.
We like bread, but not for our Princess Peach cake.
Right. You want to start this out on low because you don't want to be wearing a face full of flour. Not that I've done that before.
No, never. Neither one of us.
I think that's good. You think it's
Yep,
just starting
yep.
to come together? It's still a little goopy, but you don't see any big granules of flour.
And so our last step before we get this ready to go in the oven is to add our peaches. We have 3 cups of chopped peaches. You want to chop them fairly small. If they're too big, all of the peaches will just sink to the bottom of the cake, and then you'll have a very uneven bake. But we've got kind of different sizes in here. You can use fresh peaches or you can use frozen peaches. If you use frozen, just make sure that you drain all the excess liquid off of them.
Okay, great. I love peaches.
Me too.
I'm excited for this. Dump it in. All right, how long is this going to mix for?
Just again until it's incorporated. You want to mix
Okay.
it on low speed so you don't mush all your peaches up. And again, because we've already got the flour in there, we don't want to mix this for too long.
Just enough to get it mixed in. I think that looks good.
Okay, we're ready to start filling some pans. Okay, so we have mixed up all of our batter. It's a pretty thick batter, so if you're looking at yours and you think this is really thick, I've messed up, no, you haven't, trust us. So now we want to start filling our pan. As I mentioned, we're doing these as mini cakes, mini bundt cakes. If you don't have a mini bundt pan and you don't want to buy one, you can also do these as cupcakes. You'll just fill up a cupcake pan, and when we get to the filling step, we'll tell you what to do there if you're doing the cupcake method. So the first thing we want to do, of course, is make sure our cakes don't stick to the pan, so we want to grease our pan up.
And I still have the butter wrapper from before when we added it to the recipe. And what we're going to do is just smear it in there. Don't let any of that good butter go to waste.
If you didn't save your butter wrapper, then you're not out of luck. You can also use a baking spray. We like the baking spray rather than cooking spray. Cooking spray is just oil. This has some flour in it, and it'll help it release a little bit better. It'll also help it not get too brown. If you just use like a canola oil spray, sometimes that'll cause over browning of your cake. So I'm going to spray some of these. Nora's going to butter wrap some of them, and then we're going to start filling.
Let's try it.
All right, let's get started filling. So what you want to do is fill these up. If you're using the mini bundt pan, you want to fill them up just to that middle spindle. If you fill them up much further than that, you're going to have this huge muffin top that you've got to cut off once you get done baking. If you're doing a cupcake pan, about 3/4 is usually the guideline that you want to go for so that your cupcake doesn't spew all over. Now, as you can see, this is a thick batter, so you're going to have to use a spoon or a knife or a little spatula to kind of move your batter around and make sure it's in the right place. We'll bake these in a 350-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. While your cakes are baking, let's go ahead and prepare the filling. In a medium-sized pot over medium-high heat, add 1 tablespoon unsalted butter, 300 grams finely chopped peaches, with or without skin, that's your choice, 150 grams or about 2/3 cup light brown sugar, and 1 teaspoon cardamom. Slowly bring that mixture up to a boil, gently stirring as it heats up and the peaches begin to release their liquids. Once boiling, reduce the heat down and simmer the peach mixture gently for about 3 to 5 minutes. Remove from heat and transfer to the refrigerator to cool completely before moving on to the next step. After about 20 minutes, check your cakes for doneness by inserting a toothpick into the center of one of your mini cakes. When the toothpick pulls away clean, they're ready to come out of the oven. Now make sure you allow your cakes to cool completely before you try to get them out of the pan, or they'll probably come out in little pieces, and nobody wants that. Alright, so we've allowed our cakes to cool, and now we are ready to start filling them. Now if you, like us, overfilled one or more or all of them, there's a pretty easy way to take care of that. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a bread knife, ideally a bread knife because it's serrated and it's a little less easy for you to accidentally cut yourself, although please do be careful. And you're going to leave them in the pan, and you're just going to go right along the edge of the pan and just kind of shave off that excess on top. That way your cakes, if you've done the mini buns, will sit flat when you turn them out onto a plate. Easy peasy, and you can eat the little muffin top. It's a win-win. Okay, so we have turned our cakes out of the pan. We've cut down any that had overflow and were a little muffin toppy, and now we are ready to fill them. As a reminder, if you wanted to, you could do this cake completely different. You could do it cupcake style, and the filling process will be a little different for that. I'll walk you through it as soon as we walk through this process. So for the baby buns, it's super easy. All you got to do is take a spoonful of our filling that we made while our cake was baking. Make sure it's cool, and just drop it into the little round part where the bun is.
These look
Repeat that
fantastic.
Thank you. We'll repeat that.
Now how much do we put in? Just until it's full?
Just until it's full.
Okay.
If you decided to do the cupcake route, then what you would want to do is take your cupcakes, take your spoon, and just carve out a little bitty hole in there. Take your filling, spoon it into that hole, and then when you frost over top, you won't notice there's a little gap there. And we have a beagle on the screen.
And do these need to sit after we're finished filling? Before
They should sit, ideally pop them in the fridge for at least 15 minutes. That'll let the filling kind of congeal a little bit so that when we're frosting you have a little more room to make a mess without getting the filling involved. The next step for our Princess Peach cakes is to go ahead and make our buttercream. And it's a super simple recipe. We're basically just going to take some ingredients and throw them in a mixer and whip it up till it looks like frosting. So for that, we're going to need 350 grams of powdered sugar, or 2 cups and 3/8 cups. And that further breaks down into 2 cups, 1/4 cup, and 2 tablespoons if you're sitting there thinking, I don't have an 1/8 cup measure.
I'm very impressed with your math skills.
I studied. So we'll dump our powdered sugar in. You kind of want to do that slowly. It likes to fluff up in your face because it's so light.
All right. That was not so slowly, but that's okay. It's a little stubborn. It's okay. All right. Finally did it. Oh, there's a little bit more. You want to make sure you get every last little kernel.
It seems like it's being overly meticulous to do that, but if you don't, then your liquids in your recipe can cause everything to be too runny if you left a bunch of sugar behind.
Right.
Next, we're going to add 1 stick plus 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, kept at room temperature, so it's just easier to mix. If you didn't remember to leave it out and get it to room temperature, it's not the end of the world. As long as you're not mixing by hand, your mixer will eventually get it warmed up and get it all smooth into buttercream shape.
All right. Those added. If you were mixing by hand, I think you just pop it in the microwave for just a little bit and get it softened enough.
About a 10-second burst. If you go longer than that, you could end up with a nice butter puddle. And melted butter will not make a good buttercream.
No.
And our last ingredient is 1/4 cup of bourbon of your choice.
Oh, bourbon. I thought this was vanilla.
No, it's booze.
Well.
And as an aside, this is not a cooked frosting recipe, so this booze will not kick out. If boozy cupcakes are not your thing, then you can make this without the bourbon. What I would recommend you do there is use 1/4 cup milk, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a teaspoon of cinnamon. It'll complement the peach flavors and give you a nice, flavorful buttercream without the booze.
We are going to add the booze. Now we mix it.
Now we just mix it, whip it. You want to start on low speed so that powdered sugar doesn't hit you in the face. And as soon as it starts incorporating, you can crank your mixer up and get it nice and whipped until it looks like frosting. So now that we've made our frosting, we're ready to put it on our cakes. I'm going to be using a piping gun to do this because I make a huge mess otherwise. You can also use a piping bag or even a Ziploc fitted with a little decorator tip. Or you can just use a knife and pile your frosting on. They're your cakes, so do what you think looks good. If you're using a piping gun or a piping bag, what you want to do is aim kind of at an angle and just squeeze and go around and make like a little wreath. With just a little dip. When we finish, we're going to put our little peach crown right in the center of this buttercream frosting. Now you'll see, even if you do the same thing on every cake, they're all going to look a little different. That's fine. That gives it that homemade look. Okay, so now we are on the next to last step of our Princess Peach cakes, and that is making Princess Peach's crown. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our candy melts. I am using salted caramel. Nora's using white chocolate. You can get pretty much any flavor that you want, although different flavors have different colors and it may not look very crown-like depending on what you choose. So what we're going to do is pop those into a microwave-safe bowl, and we're going to put them in the microwave on 30-second bursts, stirring in between each one. You don't want to risk your candy scorching. You just want to get it nice and melty, and sometimes you can't really tell if it's melted all that much until you stir. So we're going to pop those into the microwave. As soon as they get melted, we're going to pour them into one of these piping bags. You can get this at pretty much any grocery store. You can get it online. And if you don't have one, you can kind of use a Ziploc bag. It's a little more unwieldy, but you can get the job done. So, we're going to microwave those and we'll be right back. Once your candy melts have reached a good pipeable consistency, so kind of smooth, flowy consistency, transfer it into your piping bag. We did that off camera because it's messy. And then we're going to pipe little crowns onto a parchment lined baking sheet. Now we have gone ahead and sketched our crowns on the baking sheet. We will provide a template that you can download off of our website. So make sure you follow the link below and we'll get you set up with that, or you can draw your own. And so what you want to do is just take your piping bag and squeeze into the shape of the crown.
Doesn't have to be exact. We have our little tool that we're going to help smooth everything out when we're done.
Now you want to fill it in, otherwise it'll be really likely to break. As you can see, that looks pretty goopy and nasty, so we're going to take our little tool There are actual tools that you can buy at the craft store to do this, but we're using a stir stick, toothpick, or the little cookie decorating tool if you've got one of those. And just use that to push the candy melt around until it is minimally lumpy and fills in your crown shape. And we're going to make as many crowns as we have made cupcakes. So we're just going to go through and finish the rest of these up. Once you've got all of your crowns popped out onto your baking sheet, you can either leave these on your counter to cool. It may take up to 30 minutes or an hour depending on how thick you popped them for them to fully cool, so you'll be able to peel them off of the parchment in one solid piece and they won't clump up and get gummy. Or you can pop them in the freezer and usually they'll cool in about 15 minutes that way. Once we've got that done, we'll be ready to assemble our cake and eat. Once your crowns are set up, and you can test them just by poking them lightly with your finger. If any candy melt comes away on your finger, they are not set enough. If it doesn't and it feels nice and set like a candy bar would, then you are good to take them out of the freezer, or if you've just left them on the counter, to get started with them. If you've popped them fairly thick, they should come up just real easy. Sometimes all you have to do is jiggle the paper and they'll move around. So all we're going to do is pick these crowns up and put them in the center of our cakes. Just like this. Just push that down where the crown is sticking up. Once we get our crowns in, we're ready to plate. And that's our Princess Peach Cakes. Bon appetit!
Oh, my favorite part.
Yay! So that was it. That was our very first meal, our very first episode.
I'm
So
stuffed.
much fun.
I'm absolutely stuffed.
So I will say the worst part about filming that was Rachel started pulling the baby Mario from Yoshi's Island halfway through.
It's not true. I didn't do that. I didn't do that.
No.
I thought about it a couple times, but I didn't.
I think everything turned out great. I think my favorite dish was the burrata salad. Cheese, bread, basil, pesto. You can't go wrong with that.
You really can't. I'm always a sucker for burrito. But I think if I had to choose one from this episode, my favorite would be the peach cakes. I just absolutely loved them. The filling, the cake, the buttercream. Oh,
It was so
just
good.
fantastic.
I'm gonna go with the meatloaf just because it's the most Italian, I feel, dish that we did, and I am addicted to goat cheese. That stuff is fantastic, and then just the raw basil on top for me is excellent as well.
And they look so good. They look really cute.
And that mocktail, that was absolutely fantastic. I think I could drink a swimming pool's worth of that drink. Absolutely delicious.
And you can because it's a mocktail. So.
Yeah, you can just drink all you want until the lemon soda makes your belly hurt.
Yeah.
And I got nervous about adding the thyme because it's such a polarizing flavor sometimes in most meals, but I feel like with that it gives you more of an odor to counteract that sourness than actually going for the flavor of the thyme.
I think the thyme is really what sets it apart. I think that's really what takes it from just being a sweet lemon drink to something more. It's something that's just fantastic.
All right, so now that we made all those mocktails, we're out of time. Would you like to lead us to the outro?
Yeah, so we would love to hear from you. If you made any of these recipes, we'd love to know what your favorites were. We'd love to see what you made if you tried any of those. So hit us up with the hashtag BonAppaGeek. You can follow us on our socials at BonAppaGeek Show. Make sure you put that show in there so you get us and not someone random. BonAppaGeek Show at Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also find our recipes written out on our website in blog format at boneappageekshow.com. And you can catch us here every other Sunday at 6 o'clock when new episodes drop.
Yep, and all the information is going to be in the description box below. And this is our first episode, so if you liked what you saw, please hit that subscribe button. That will really help us out.
We'll see you in 2 weeks when we come back with Cowboy Bebop.
Ooh, can't wait.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.